In this video, I want to explain to you what I do as a cloud engineer. So the goal here is to help you to understand what a cloud engineer actually does, what the role involves, how we work, what a typical day looks like. I'm going to walk through what the job actually entails, how it compares to similar roles like DevOps and SRE, what my day looks like, what tools I use on a daily basis, and then we'll get into the pay and the lifestyle. So the reason I include SRE or Site Reliability Engineer and DevOps Engineer with this is that cloud engineering roles are not super well defined and it varies a lot based off the company, the team, the industry. But broadly speaking, it's someone who builds and manages cloud infrastructure, things like the compute, networking, storage, permissions, deployment pipelines, and monitoring, usually on AWS, Azure, GCP. There's a few others, but those are the three main ones. So you're making sure that these systems that other people build can actually run somewhat reliably. And in some companies, there is an overlap between that cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, or SRE, but this is usually the explanation of the difference. A cloud engineer will be focused on just building infrastructure. So it's usually with tools like Terraform, Docker, Kubernetes, and whatever cloud provider they're using. And then a DevOps engineer is usually more focused on the automation and delivery. So things like CI/CD, deployment pipelines, and internal tooling. But there's definitely some overlap. The DevOps engineers need to kind of be a little more widespread. They need to know more generally what the dev team is working on so that they can help integrate it to the cloud systems and also how to design these cloud systems. And then lastly, the SRE, or again, site reliability engineer, they're more focused on uptime, reliability. How can we make sure that our systems are reliable? We limit our downtime. How can we handle incidents? What kind of tools can we write to improve our monitoring, our performance? And a lot of this kind of the reliability is often driven through automation. So it's how can we remove the chance that a human error will happen? And that's usually by driving automation to do this thing, to test it before we deploy it, to make sure that systems are alerting us before they go down rather than when they go down, those sorts of things. So, yes, the role is pretty broad. And again, it means a lot of things in a lot of different companies, but that's kind of the point. You sit between software engineers and infrastructure. Before we get into the skills that are required to be a cloud engineer, I quickly wanted to mention if you are looking for cloud engineering support, if you're on a team and your team needs support, or if you manage a team, go ahead and reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have it linked in the description and the pinned comment. DM me there and we can chat. So, because this job covers a lot, you're going to need experience in a lot of different areas. First, you're definitely going to be comfortable or need to be comfortable writing infrastructure as code. So, that's usually with Terraform. There's plenty of others like Pulumi, CloudFormation. You'll need to know your way around the portals as well within Azure, AWS, GCP. Those, again, the main three. So you'll want to know Docker, Kubernetes, probably some scripting. So most of cloud engineers, if you're writing programming languages, it's going to be Python, maybe Golang, but Python's really the biggest one for this. Golang is kind of moving in and taking the spot now for some of the infrastructure stuff. On top of that, you will need to understand networking basics. These things like VPC, subnet, security groups, and IAM, which to be honest, that's going to be a lot of the job, or at least the time that you spend is going to make sure the IAM and the security that you get things right. You need to set up the least privilege, make sure you're applying the proper roles to your resources, to your people, your groups. So it's going to be very quick once you get good at writing infrastructure as code for building the system. The design can take a bit of time, but we'll get into that. But when you actually build it, it doesn't take that long to get most of it up. But then you're not going to know all of the resource requirements as far as the access policies go from the start. So it's a lot of tinkering at that point. Next up, you're going to want to know CI/CD pipelines, monitoring systems, logs, alerts, and then some positions like this will actually be on call. So there's systems like PagerDuty that you'll be on call, say, overnight from 10 to 6 a.m., and you're going to have some alert on your phone. You might not get work, but if something happens, you need to be available. If the system goes down, you'll get a call or an alert, and you need to get to your system within a very short period of time. So be aware of that. That is especially in the site reliability engineering roles. That happens way more often, and that's an expectation to be set. So in terms of me personally, how do I work day to day? I work in a cross-functional team. It is basically I'm on a government contract and we are a managed service provider for other government entities effectively. That's kind of as much as I can share. So we get a lot of work that is it's very heavy on the operations side. Basically providing permissions, creating platforms that allow these other agencies to be able to work in a safe environment. So what they want from us is it is like total PaaS or platform as a service. They come to us and say, "Hey, we need to host a website," and that's all they tell us. But we need to make sure that we give them some kind of instance to run it on, like a virtual machine, and that it is up to all of the standards that they are required to as a government agency. So we have lots of run books as far as Ansible. We have different Packer images that we build out. We have Terraform to build out our actual machines for them from our platform service that we have. So all of that goes into place, and we are responsible for managing that, making sure the systems are locked down, making sure they're secure, making sure that they're available, all of those sorts of things. So I personally do a lot of the infrastructure and automation. A lot of our team is kind of the traditional like IT admin type of people, and I'm working to help them automate themselves out of their jobs and into higher leverage positions. So they're manually patching all of these systems, and they use Ansible playbooks. So not fully manual, but they use Ansible to do this, and someone's logging in and running these commands where we're trying to basically set it up as how can we run this on some setup cadence. So let's say every week we're going to patch all of our systems, and then someone just gets an alert. So now I get an email saying, "Hey, patching went great," or "these servers didn't get patched," and then they only have to manually do that. So that's where a lot of my work currently is. In the past, I was a full stack developer, so I was fully across from writing React applications all the way to designing the API and the infrastructure to host them and building them with Terraform on AWS, all sorts of things. Generally, my work follows a pretty standard pattern. We have projects that we put it in Jira that are certain tasks, usually about like a week or two that they take to implement from start to end. Someone usually needs infrastructure for some new service or feature. We scope it out, we determine what resources they really need, what security things are at play, and who the proper teams are that we need to get involved for that if that's the case, and then how it fits into our existing system. So we have some standards that we've already set, and we want to make sure we align to them where possible so that we don't have unique, they call them snowflakes all over, basically. We don't want every application to be completely unique because that's way too hard to manage. And then I'll write out Terraform, help charts, etc. Ansible playbooks. We'll create the VMs for them. Whatever it is they're looking for, we provide the infrastructure for the dev teams to be working inside of. And then once the infrastructure is built out, we're responsible for monitoring it. So we have to make sure that we're tracking the logs. We're making sure that we provide permissions to who's needed. We're removing permissions from people that are no longer needing it, and tracking any metrics and alerts. We want to make sure we have alerts in place to tell us if things are going south before they fully blow up. So if we know that a system, when it hits 80% CPU, that users start having really bad experiences, we want to know when it gets to 60% so that we can figure out what to do with it if our auto scaling isn't working. How can we prevent that rather than waiting for it to happen and fixing it? There is a lot of cross-team collaboration in this, so be ready for that. It's absolutely not solo. It's not even allowed because of the shared responsibility and RACI principles across these teams, that you can't do a cloud engineering role in any company that's even small to mid-size by yourself. There's going to be network experts. There's going to be policy experts. There's going to be traditional IT that is setting the compliance standards. There's going to be developers that are trying to build stuff as fast as they can and breaking stuff and making S3 buckets public. So you're fully across the stack, and it really is about providing support to the right teams and making sure that they can move quickly without getting blocked. And the best cloud engineers are the ones that find ways to automate these handoffs. So in prior orgs that I've worked in, there's been so many handoffs that it's like this team has to do something, then this team, then this team. And usually this is tracked in change management tools like ServiceNow. So you'll have tasks, and those tasks will get assigned down the list. But each task is a different team, and it have to wait for the prior team to do it. It's not like a bunch of distributed that everyone can do it in one day. It's like one day the first team does this, then the next, and it can take 2 weeks to do maybe 2 hours work because it's so many different people. So the best cloud engineers are the ones that find ways to make all of that transition as quick or even not even a transition at all. So how can we build out these platform as a service that provide us that flexibility? So now let's get into the personal side, compensation, day in the life, etc. So I personally like starting early. I live on the west coast of the US, and we work in Kansas City primarily. So I'm fully remote. That's super nice. and I work Kansas City hours, so that's a 2 hour difference. So I generally wake up like 5 or 6 a.m. and start work pretty quickly. Usually it's a couple of quiet hours up until like 8 a.m. my time. Usually I will have meetings from like 8 to 11 ish. Some days it's like one 15-minute meeting. Other days it's 3 hours back to back of meetings. It really varies a lot. But I generally don't have too many meetings where I'm currently at, whereas in prior companies I've had a lot more of them. Um, and then the end of the day is usually pretty code heavy. So just managing whatever projects I'm currently working on, how can I move them forward as quick as I can? Sometimes I'm reaching out to people and getting on calls kind of ad hoc, but it's really just heads down coding for most of the day. And I usually wrap up between like 2 to 3 p.m. So it definitely gives a good lifestyle and work life balance, especially where I'm currently at, that I start early and I'm done by early afternoon and I have the rest of the day myself. And then as far as salary, on levels.fyi, which if you haven't used that before, go check it out. It'll tell you everything about whatever company you're looking for in the job title and position level. The median salary in the US for DevOps engineer is around 145,000. And for SREs, it's closer to 200,000. So definitely a good salary. And that is one of the big reasons that a lot of people get into this. If you're a cloud engineer, generally you'll land somewhere in that range. Cloud engineers tend to be a little more general than, say, an SRE, so you'll probably be close to that DevOps engineer, like the 145,000 mark, if I had to guess. So now to answer the question, should you become a cloud engineer? These will be my opinions, and you can take them for what you will. So one, it's actually interesting. I love this stuff. I know some people don't. I actually started in the industry, and it was really, I got into computer science. I knew I could work remotely and make good money, and it was a job. And then the longer I've been in it, the more interested I've gotten in it. So that has been incredible. I spend weekends tinkering with different applications. I'm learning some AI agents right now. So like all over the place, just trying to learn whatever I can. But I do generally enjoy most of the job. Secondly, you are cross collaborating, like I mentioned. There's so many different teams you're working in, and there's so many things going on. So I love the automation side of it. And how can I work with people to do my job and do their job and then figure out what we can work on next to continually kind of leverage up the activities we're working in. Third thing is the flexibility. I obviously can't skip over this. Working remotely from 5 to 2 or 3 o'clock has been so nice. I can't imagine going into an office from 9 to 5 after doing this. And then, of course, it pays well. I can't complain making the amount of money that I make for a job that I really enjoy doing. So I hope this video gives you a bit of a clearer picture as far as what a cloud engineer actually does. If you found this helpful and you want to learn more about how to actually become a cloud engineer and the technical details of what I do on a day-to-day basis, go ahead and subscribe and check out my other videos. I post videos all the time of like hands-on, in-depth tutorials that'll teach you exactly how to become a cloud engineer without having to go to school. And with that being said, if you're on a team or if you manage a team at any company that needs cloud engineering support, DM me on LinkedIn. I'm always looking to chat with people that are looking for this type of work and happy to help where I can. Otherwise, thank you for watching.